that there is also an export of the revolution. It's no accident that that Elon Musk has involved himself in UK politics and elevated a Nigel Farage and the reform movement in much the same way that it was instructive that on his way to the Munich Security Summit, Vice President Vance addressed the Alternative für Deutschland.
Good morning, guys. Good morning. Yay, Vugani, wake up, wake up, wake up. So the US has fired our own Ambassador Ibrahim Rasool over the accusations that he hates America, he hates President Trump, and he is also race baiting. And I was looking at this, I was like, look who's talking. Anyway, guys, welcome to South Africa Lately, a channel that discusses South African trending news. We do, however, grab here and there from international news when it is trending enough to be brought here. Please do understand that I'm not a politician. I do not have deep knowledge in politics. However, I am a South African citizen who is also a voter, and I do believe that my views count when it comes to political affairs of this country. Just to give you an idea of what this is all about, before we watch a clip of our ambassador, exactly what he said that quote-unquote led to this, which I highly doubt. South African Ambassador Ibrahim Rasool, Trump is leading global white supremacist movement. And I cannot say I am not agreeing with our ambassador, because let me tell you something. I have seen how the US has been moving, and in the front I see Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and Marco Rubio that are leading this movement against South Africa. And the way it has been happening in South Africa, I even said in one of my videos that who knew that Trump winning in America would cause so much chaos in South Africa. So whatever they are doing in America and in other countries, they are exporting it to South Africa. So Marco Rubio posted, South Africa's ambassador to the United States is no longer welcome in our great country. Ibrahim Rasool is the race-baiting politician who hates America and hates Porters. We have nothing to discuss with him, and so he is considered persona non grata. It did not start today. So even when they were taking their US aid from South Africa, they did not communicate with him. He read in the news like everybody else. There was no protocol. They've just been having it for South Africa like that. And this is happening in the midst of our politicians. I don't want to say the government, because this looks like the ANC agenda of changing Sentin Drive into being named after Leila Khaled. And that's a different story altogether. I'm going to be sharing another video who Leila Khaled is and why the ANC feels like they need to change the name, and they need to name Sentin Drive after him. And the US was saying, like, you know what, we closing our consulate then in your Johannesburg, should you do that? So there has been different reactions to that. And then we wake up, there's also this. I'm going to make a separate video about Leila Khaled. I hope you're going to watch that one too. So we are going to hear what Ibrahim Rasool said, which led to this. But I highly doubt they just needed something like this. And I totally, please disagree with me in the comment section. But for me, I agree with everything that he is saying. And I think for the USA, it's like, how dare you? Why must you be saying this? Who are you? It's a constant undermining of South Africa by the US and the personal vendetta due to that Israel case by South Africa. So for me, that's how it looks like for me. But then again, you have the comment section. Please share your views in the comment section. I'm going to be reading those, even though I don't get to respond, but I'm going to be reading those, maybe react if I get time. Let us hear what Ibrahim Rasool said.
That I think what Donald Trump is launching is an assault on incumbency, those who are in power, by mobilizing a supremacism against the incumbency at home, and I think I've illustrated abroad as well. So in terms of that, the supremacist assault on incumbency, we see it in the domestic politics of the USA, the MAGA movement, the Make America Great Again movement, as a response not simply to a supremacist instinct, but to very clear data that shows great demographic shifts in the USA, in which the voting electorate in the USA is projected to become 48% white, and that the possibility of a majority of minorities is looming on the horizon. And so that needs to be factored in so that we understand some of the things that we think are instinctive, nativist, racist things. I think that there's data that, for example, would support that, that would go to this wall being built, the deportation movement, etc., etc. So I think I mentioned that. I think that there is also an export of the revolution. It's no accident that that Elon Musk has involved himself in UK politics and elevated a Nigel Farage and the reform movement in much the same way that it was instructive that on his way to the Munich Security Summit, Vice President Vance addressed the Alternative für Deutschland to strengthen them in their election campaign. And that then begins to say, what was the role then of Afrikaners in that whole makeup? And very clearly, it's to project white victimhood as a dog whistle, that there is a global protective movement that is beginning to envelop embattled white communities, or apparently embattled white communities. It may not be true, it may not make sense, but that is not the dog whistle that is being heard in a global white base. So I think we need to understand all of that. Another discontinuity, it's almost that they are putting a supremacist insurgency against the incumbency, and therefore we need to rethink our old categories of rationalization, because in that category there are mainstream Republicans like Mitt Romney and so forth that are seen as part of the incumbency that are also embattled. And so it's an intra-party insurgency as well as a global insurgency and a national one in the USA.
Well, Sandile Swana is a South African governance specialist and political analyst, and I'm pleased to say that he joins us now from South Africa. What can you tell us then about the relations between the US and South Africa?
The relationship between South Africa and the United States of America has been damaged by the efforts of South Africa to take the state of Israel to the ICJ, and also by taking Netanyahu to the International Criminal Court of Justice, Criminal Court, sorry, for genocide, for war crimes. So that has actually the core of the dispute between South Africa and the United States.
Yeah, so is this very much to do with Israel then? Is that at the heart of this, as you just mentioned there?
Yes, the conflict between South Africa and the United States of Africa is about the steps that South Africa is taking to address the genocide in Palestine, which is being conducted by the state of Israel. That is the core of the conflict. There is not really any other basis of the conflict.
Yeah, and what ramifications, though, will this have now, particularly for South Africa? Because the US is such a dominant force, isn't it, in terms of its finances and the finances that it gives out, and in terms of diplomatic relations. It's so powerful.
Yes, the United States has always been powerful, but you'll remember that the Rasool comes from the African National Congress, the politics of the left in South Africa. That political school of thought represents more than 2/3 of the majority in South Africa. And in the fight against apartheid here in South Africa, the United States was not a supporter of the African National Congress. They supported the apartheid regime, and Rasool continues to point out that the behavior of the United States even now is to support apartheid and genocide. So there will be ramifications, but those ramifications, since we were born, we lived under those ramifications, especially as Black South Africans.
I mean, in terms of those ramifications, will South Africa representatives or the government there, will they be worried about this? Will they be concerned?
Obviously, when you're in a state of conflict, you have reasons to be concerned, but the question is whether you'll abandon the struggle or not. I do not see the South African Parliament voting to drop the case at the ICJ or drop the cases at the ICC. That is not going to happen. So whatever sanctions or any other actions that the United States takes against President Ramaphosa or against any leaders of the ANC are of little consequences. A little consequence, it will be like Cuba, for instance, if it needs to be.
Okay, Sandile Swana, South Africa governance specialist and political analyst, we really appreciate your time and your expertise. Thank you.
Thank you.
That are not government actors, but speak to issues that affect the nation, such as AFRIFORUM and other lobby groups that we've heard about. Some have gone as far as saying that it's treasonous. Of course, there is the freedom of association, which comes within the Bill of Rights, and people are allowed to do that. But where does one draw the line?
Well, associations play a role in every sector, whether it's agricultural, land, mining, aerospace. It's just a part of foreign policy and bilateral relations. There's chambers of commerce. There's various associations so that's really nothing new in terms of foreign policy or bilateral relations. So it's important. I think what we're missing here with the Trump 2.0, or what you want to call it, is looking back for the last 30 years, there was always, we started something called the U.S.-South Africa Binational Commission, and Obama started something called the Strategic Dialogue between our two countries. And there was really some personal, you saw a relationship between, when I was living in South Africa for 10 years, between Obama and Zuma. President Zuma had a good rapport. And even going back to Madiba and President Clinton and Mbeki and Al Gore also had this kind of connection. Okay, we didn't have Twitter back then or email or that, but those personal connections, whether as part of trade associations or at a presidential level or vice president or congressional, are really important. I mean, often the public don't see these trade delegations or conferences that take place in South Africa or across the African continent, but they're really important to really fostering communication, dialogue, and focusing on the positive. Because you could say, from the American perspective, they keep poking America, taking Israel to The Hague, or they're having a Russian ship stock like Lady R back in 2023, or their relations with Putin in Ukraine. But you could also argue that Ramaphosa, they want peace, world peace. You could say Trump wants to be a peacemaker. He wants to end wars. So there's some synergy there. So we need to really focus on the positive. I think it's going to be important, and then have the various people in the room to try to get to those goals and meet those ambitions.
Yeah. So I'm going to read at least 2 posts on X reacting to this. This one said, USA must keep pressing South Africa. I like it. The sooner we cut ties with USA, the better. We are tired to rely on that useless, racist, opportunist, and bully country. South Africa is capable to stand on its own. It helps us to grow. Also, this helps BRICS to fast-track its mission. We must walk out from dollar and decolonize it. I remember when Putin said, we like using the dollar. It's good that we use the dollar, but if the people who own it don't want us to use it, what can we do? Yeah, guys, we're living in a strange world. So this one said, this is exactly the kind of push South Africa needed to go all in with BRICS. It's time South Africa strengthen relations more with BRICS member states, create more trade agreements with BRICS member states, and commit to de-dollarization drive. Because I just feel like this administration is so abusive towards South Africa. It's not even funny. Like, they don't want South Africa to feel like we have power to do anything. Guys, if you watched up to here, this is South Africa Lately, a channel that discusses South African trending news. We do, however, grab here and there from international news when it is trending enough to be brought here. And the next time you bump into my videos, kindly watch my ads in full. It really goes a long way, and that is the only option you can be supporting the channel for now. I'll see you in my next upload, where we'll be discussing about who Leila Khaled is and the reaction of the USA, towards the changing of Sentence Drive to Leila Khaled.